Hello, everyone. My name is Trish McCabe, and welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. This is a podcast where people from all walks of life will be sharing their stories and the wisdom they have gained from their life experiences. In no way is this show offering any kind of advice or counsel. These conversations will be of a very sensitive nature, so please be respectful in your comments, and thank you for watching. Boom. Hello, everyone. My name is Trish McCabe. Welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. Conversations. Anyways, I have my guest, Rob, here again to join me today.
Hello,
Hi, Rob.
Trisha. Hi.
Today, we're going to be going over the connection between covert NPD abuse and codependency. And before we do these shows, Rob and I get together and kind of go over what we want to do. And you were saying that you had done some thoughts on codependency, and I want to hear what that is, what you have to say.
Yeah. First, I wanted to give a brief definition of what codependency is, and it goes something like this. A codependent is a person who gets their self-esteem in part through enduring unhealthy relationships. So they're taking on, the brunt of that in a relationship, and it also putting the needs of other people ahead of their own needs is also a factor of that. And the next one is and the lack of making proper boundaries, especially with people that have personality disorders such as narcissistic personality disorder, borderlines, and antisocial personality disorder. So it's basically a sacrifice of self learned from childhood that that you're always going around, in the relationship, taking the abuse and the pain, and not putting the boundaries in there. And sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's a little more overt, but nevertheless, you're the one sacrificing, and the other person is, taking. Basically, you are the giver, and the other person is the taker. And there's an actual mating that happens. There's a natural flow with that. And so that's the basic definition of it.
That's great. I've heard this a lot because I've had therapy myself where, when you're with, you're the empath and you're with a narcissist, and those toxic behaviors are happening and everything. The covert is the enabler. And covert is the
Absolutely. Yeah, because you don't have the boundaries, and it's just like you're kind of like dealing with it, and it comes from childhood. You're allowing it to happen because it's a very natural process for you. It's like you're primed for it from childhood. So you let those boundaries get crossed, and what happens eventually in the relationship, the empathic person or the codependent, they get to a level usually where they're like, their energy gets depleted, and they're like, I'm out of here, but sometimes they don't, depending on different circumstances. They'll stay in the whole dysfunction for, till death, sometimes in marriages. I've seen that happen.
Shut down. They shut down, and they
Yeah,
don't ever
they'll
come
shut
back.
down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they'll avoid each other. One will go to bed early, the other will go to bed late. One will rise early, one will rise late. So they spend less time with each other. So it's really a dysfunctional way of doing a relationship. But this all comes from the way actually both parties have been raised in their childhood. And the funny thing is that both the narcissist and the codependent empathic person, they're both codependent, but in a different way. They're
Yes.
still singing or dancing the same dance, but in different forms, because the narcissist needs people. They need people to fulfill to get that validation, especially exterior adoration from the outside. And with the codependent, they need validation from that specific person. So it's like the codependent needs it from the one, and the narcissist needs it from anyone and everyone that will give them narcissistic supply and attention and validation. Validation is a big deal for them, along with actually power and control. Those are other things that give them fuel, or they call it narcissistic supply.
The narcissist needs validation, and the narcissist, you had mentioned this before, uses invalidation to control an empath.
Yeah, that's also supply for the narcissist. If they invalidate, which they in their own mind they're putting themselves above someone else, they get they're in control. That feeds the narcissistic supply bucket, whatever you want to call it, to where they feel good. They need that supply. If it's if they can't get it through adoration or attention, they love attention, then they'll get it through importance.
And importance
is huge. That's like the more important, the better the narcissist is. That's very important to them, the power, control, and image and all that. So but like I said, all that stuff comes from early childhood trauma, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, and then they'll spoil. Some parents will do that and spoil them on top, which gives them a sense of entitlement. So they'll feel entitled to go and just do what and whenever until someone stops them. And that's the problem with codependence, is that they have an issue with having them stop and drawing those boundaries, because when they were growing up, those were crossed, from a narcissistic parent. That's usually how codependents are made, usually from a caregiver or a narcissistic parent.
This is great. That particular is what happens when you're little. In my experiences, if you do try to illustrate a boundary, you're taught that you will lose that relationship. The love that's given to you, or approval, or anything, any kind of attention, is removed if the empath codependent tries to illustrate a boundary, put a boundary in place. So we learn at a very young age, if we put a boundary in place, we will lose that love and attention and everything, basically. And that's how it works.
Right. And it's primed you, and you'll keep that all the way into your adulthood, from your childhood, because it's those first, 5 to 7 years of, you're like a sponge absorbing everything. It becomes a part of your personality where you accept those things and you don't know any different. So what you do is until you learn about these things later, and you take it into your adult life as well as narcissists, and you have it's destruction. It's unhealthy, it's hard, it's difficult, and relationships should not have to be like that. Relationships should be, giving, supportive, loving, caring, respectful, complete opposite of what you're having in this type of dysfunction.
Yes. And you don't have the ability to say no. In your mind, you have that fear of abandonment.
Big time.
You do. So, and that just bleeds over into everything. And because we have this codependent narcissist set up in society, it also is in school and your jobs, and so the empath goes into life really just having such a hard time, because it's just hard to have boundaries anywhere, not just in your romantic relationship.
It bleeds into your whole life, Trisha. Yes. Your work life, friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships, everything. And yeah, you're totally right. When you express those things as a child, you'll get berated for anything different from those boundaries that have been set in place from that narcissistic parent. If you're independent, you wanted, hey, I'm doing my own thing. Nope, that might reflect on me bad. You're not going to do that independent unless I approve of it. You get that. Your wants or wishes, um, expressing emotions. This is a huge one because when you
Mm.
can't express your emotions properly, you get disconnected from your inner self. You're suppressing all of that. If you're not allowed to cry or even not allowed to express your anger, in a healthy way, not go out and, start doing crazy stuff, but, hey, I'm really upset about this. That's even cut off, with the narcissistic parent, because that's a bother to them. They're like, I don't want this, I'm not enjoying this.
Oh,
And you
so
take that,
huge.
yeah, and so you take that into your adulthood, and that's normal for you, for someone to be dismissive as an adult to your emotions, and then what
Yes.
happens, that all that builds up, it builds up, it builds up, and resentment starts to build and explode, and then you have drama, and it's a mess. So that's
Oh
why
my
we're here to
gosh.
try and bring, this knowledge to the world, so
I think
they don't
so
have to
many
deal with that.
illnesses are caused by this particular of because of this, we're taught that our emotions are bad and wrong. And so we're always having to keep them at bay. And I feel strongly that's
Yes,
why there's so much addiction and in many different ways, not just substance addiction, but relationship addiction, work addiction, and anything. Because once the feelings want to come up and be
you want to
addressed,
skip, you want to
you
skip.
don't feel comfortable with
Yeah,
them, so you just avoid in every way you can. Um, that's the
absolutely.
unhealthy outcome of what happens to when you're
Yeah,
little.
you suppress all those emotions, and you don't know how to get rid of those, and in a healthy way, or to express them from your childhood, so you just keep sweeping it under the rug until that big pause gets so big, and everything is just, it goes wild, and it's definitely not good for
Hence
for adulthood.
comes panic attacks.
Anxiety is
I was in
huge.
therapy. Yeah, they said, a lot of panic attacks are really just suppressed anger a lot of the
That's
times.
exactly what it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is. Yeah, depression, anxiety, both is
Yes,
repressed
depression.
anger. And how do we learn to, how do we get to that point? Well, we weren't allowed to, express our dislike, or anger, or our own individual proclivities to something, so yeah, yeah, it's something that, you're primed for later, for dysfunction later in life. And the sad thing is, Trisha, is that, it's not about, pointing the finger at anyone, because those parents were taught, they weren't given the skills from their parents, and it's a chain reaction, down the family chain. I think we've spoken this before on other episodes, where it's just, it keeps going down the family line and perpetuating itself until someone says, okay, that this is just too crazy, what's going on here, and addresses it, and redirects, reacting, or doing life, in a more healthier way.
Wow, this is so great. I just can't I know I say this, but it's just wonderful to be able to really I know you're not alone. I know I'm not alone, and we're in this of just like we've thought about this for so long and seen it not just in our own lives, but helping our friends and other people deal with these difficulties. And it's just like, why is it like this? So it's so nice to really be able to get to the bottom of these things and really talk about them truthfully and openly so that other people can really understand, and most of all that they're not there's nothing wrong with them for the
Right.
feelings that happen from being raised like this,
Right. And a big thing too is, to when you get to a certain level of awareness, that, you're not going to go and, be mad at people that have been part of cultivating or been a part of your life that has, been difficult. But it's more about the understanding of it and understanding both sides of the fence so you can put it all together, have it make sense, and not hold on to any type of resentment or anger. You let that stuff go, you forgive. And that's why, when I help people with narcissistic personality disorder abuse, that I tell them knowledge is the key, because once you have the knowledge of how this works and you realize that, hey, this wasn't me the whole time, it was what it was, you know, um, even, with the codependency, and being an empath or enabling, subconsciously. But it's about the understanding about both sides and getting through it and living healthier from that point on, and not holding that resentment on your shoulders, because that's free rent space. You don't want to give free rent space to anyone,
Oh, that's great.
especially if they're subconsciously doing it,
And when you do, you had said this before, when you're an empath, I mean, they'll just leave you drained to your, like you said, this a shell of a person.
Oh, it's horrific. Yeah, you
You're
have like
lost. Yeah.
you just have no energy, because your whole processing world has been turned upside down. Because when you're dealing with, personality disorders, it's so unnatural to regular thinking that you're trying to bend yourself to, and when you're going through the abuse, it's not like a one-time thing. That's why we talked about complex PTSD, in the previous episode, because that's what it is. It's so foreign to neurotypical thinking that it drains you. It's totally draining, and things don't make sense, So with all that, you're expending a lot of mental and psychic energy, trying just to get through it. So yeah, definitely, for sure.
And the
It's
thing is
frustrating.
the fear, they get you with the fear. And if you've grown up as an
Yep.
empath with a narcissist, and you have a lot of bad things happen, and you're always trying to figure out, how do I keep this from happening again? They got you. When they have you afraid, then you start resisting that bad thing, and that's when they've got you. It's like,
I
they
get
can
that.
see, no, I don't want that. And then they can use that against you, that greatest fear, whatever that is. Even in insinuating it, they can start you on the path of imagining your worst case scenario. And that's how they keep you in place,
Well, yeah, because they control
Yeah.
your reactions. In the community, it's called reactive abuse, reaction abuse. So in the narc mind, when they can get you to react in a certain way, they're controlling you, and they get supply from that. They're, even if it's in a sadistic manner where it's hurting you and affecting you, they're like, I'm significant because this person is reacting to me, and that fuels the disorder narcissistic supply. And it's very dysfunctional. It's
It
horrible to
makes,
deal with it, but when you
oh,
know what it is, you can maneuver yourself and maneuver your thoughts and maneuver your reactions to not be affected like that, and you take your power back,
yeah,
which is so
that's
important.
it. That's it. I have a family member who's going through a horrible divorce. And she has some 4 children, and the ex is very abusive, and he tries to psychologically suggest things that could happen, that kind of thing. And then she gets on the bandwagon of thinking of the worst case scenario, and that's where I have to remind her,
Happened to me
don't
for years.
don't do that. Don't let him in your mind. If he's making you that fearful, you're playing into what he wants.
Yeah.
That's how he's controlling you, is through the fear of the worst case thing that could happen. And
That
thus, you fearing it, you can create it. You'll actually believe it. And then you will
yeah.
start to act upon that.
You'll manifest that.
You'll
Yeah.
manifest it through your actions because you'll be believing it. So you start doing all the things.
And that's,
it's hard to explain,
that's like,
that create
no,
it.
it's yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because, I had to deal with that myself personally, that type of abuse. And that's what it is. It's covert, suggestive, usually from an event that happened a long time ago. So you're thinking, wow, I wonder if they're going to go do that again. And what they'll do is they will imply, maybe I might go do that again. I don't know. We'll see. And they want to keep you in that state of unbalance, that state of fear, because that gives them supply, gives them control. And when they're in control, they feel good about themselves. The narcissists have horrible self-esteem issues that they've been trying to cover up with the perfect false self, and when they can get
sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to forget it. One thing that
go
he
ahead.
would say is you're never going to get rid of me, kind of thing, like suggesting that, in so many words and sometimes even just outright.
Yeah.
And you can imagine when somebody says that to you, and especially if you have children. So then,
Right.
they're using that situation to
Fear.
terrorize you, basically saying, well, I've got
Totally.
that you're going to have to share the kids with me. So now you're stuck with me, da, 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 da. And then of course, all the scenarios you could just make up yourself of what those things could be. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it was a good point that you brought up, because that sadistic nature is also supply for the narcissist, and when you pull away from a narcissist, they can't stand it because they've been psychically feeding off of you for years. And so when you tell them, hey, this doesn't feel good, I'm just like maxed out, I'm like just far below empty, if I run out of gas here, I'm out, they don't like that. They're like, really? Because I want that little part, that that little bit that you have there, I want that too. I want to just, they'll take, as long as you're giving, they have no qualms, because their empathy, their connection to empathy for other people is gonzo, so they don't process things like, wow, God, if that happened to me, that would be horrible. I'm not going to do that. That never happens in the disordered narcissist mind. So this is where we have to take our power back as empaths, or codependents, recovering codependents. It's funny too, because Ross Rosenberg, he calls it a self-love deficit. It's self-love, SLDD, self-love deficit disorder. It's his own term that he, this thing's falling, his own term that he's coined. And it's perfect, because when you placate to a narcissist through codependent behaviors of not putting those boundaries, that is a form of self-love denial. You're not loving yourself because you weren't taught these things, so now when you get older, you're kind of like relearning how to do life and live, in a healthy way. So you got to learn how to do that, and it's not easy.
Yeah, that's huge, because when we're young and when we're little and we're going through this, and we, like you said, and we're invalidated a lot, that the narcissist will treat you like you're bothersome, and you never know when that's going to be, so it's this constant come here, go away. And the only time they want you is like when it's convenient for them. And
and I think I explained this before. It can be an error of they don't even have to say words. It's just a basic attitude or body language, because our whole thing is body language, or the more than what we say. I think that was like some 90% of what we say is through the body, not the actual words. It's how we say it, our inflection. And what we learn as SLDs, codependent, recovering empaths, is that we learn how to read that body language of, when's that other shoe going to drop? What's the mood going to be like? Because that's, back from fight or flight mode from when you're little, and so you subconsciously do this throughout your whole life until you become aware of it and start changing those patterns and paradigms. But
the fight or flight thing, I've heard this a lot, and I'm not sure if you
what
could
that
explain
is,
to me
sure.
more specifically. Yeah.
Fight or flight is basically when you've lived in a type of an environment that was maybe not the most supportive, more erratic environments, that your brain goes into this what's called a fight or flight mode. It's a natural reaction in the limbic system of the brain that actually releases cortisol. It floods your amygdala with cortisol, and then your hippocampus shrinks up, and it starts creating a full operational way that you think, and actually does the brain damage that you were speaking of earlier. And enough of that fight or flight, release of that cortisol, it starts changing the way you think and your patterns. And that's how you get stuck later on in life as an adult doing the same thing, but now it's taken on a toxic nature until you point it out and figure it out and redirect yourself and get out of those relationships, because that's never going to work. You got to get away, do your own work, and then when you're good, then jump into a healthy relationship. Because a lot of times there's patterns, I was doing it too, where you would have the same person more or less that you were dating before. Those are the ones that you're attracted to because that's what you're familiar with. That's what feels like home from when you're a child. Of course, there's other relationships where like, yeah, I kind of like that person, but you're like, wow, I really like that one person. And that one person is usually that toxic person that feels like home from when you were a child, that's in your subconscious mind until you change that. So until you change that programming, you're going to keep going on to those same patterns, and after, we're responsible as well because we're letting it happen. We just didn't know, we didn't know until we know, what was going on.
And when you talk about, not loving yourself, I recognize I've talked with people, and you could say to them, oh, you don't love yourself. Oh, I love myself. They don't actually really know what that looks like. They think it's just saying it, but there's so much more to it. I mean, if you have, of course, when this happens to you, develop that dialogue. We've talked about that internal dialogue that's going on all the time. I mean, and it's there all the time. You really have to be mindful of it. You had said that word, mindful of your thoughts. Because they affect your actions, they affect your decisions,
Yeah.
And they draw those things too from your decisions. So yeah, the negative self-talk that you develop plays a huge role in not loving yourself. That's in my perspective, my point of view.
Yeah. Oh, it's 100% all that, because if you're talking to yourself, this is the thing too, because I used to have my ex-wife, and I've had even like a couple different girlfriends tell me throughout the years that, Rob, why are you so hard on yourself? You're so hard on yourself. And what happens is you're critical with yourself because you treat yourself the way you were treated in childhood. If you were treated critically, you're going to be critical until you have that aha moment. You start figuring these things out, reading, studying, saying, hey, this isn't working, and changing those patterns. That's what happens, so.
And catching yourself, like I was saying last week,
mindful, yeah.
Apologizing for yourself all the time, explaining yourself all the time. And of course, doubting yourself all the time. Like,
yes.
Doubting your ability to make a judgment call, trusting yourself, because when you're taught this way, you're taught that loyalty to family and others is more important than loyalty to yourself. So
big time.
You abandon yourself when you do that.
All the time.
Saying anything bad about yourself is self-abandonment. It's actually self-abuse.
Yeah, like when I first started with the definition, it states, it says, codependent is a person who gets their self-esteem in part through enduring unhealthy relationships. And the key word is enduring. We endure that. We take the we take one for the team, like all the time, like daily, and that also goes with our thought processes too. If we have that negative self-talk, then that's going to go right into your relationships too. So it's so important to love yourself and know that you are a loved creature of God. You're perfect just the way you are. And
And that
and there's a
includes
lot of power in that.
it's
you know
okay to have faults. Everybody has them. We're taught, oh no. So then we take a little bit of that narcissistic thing of the trying to be perfect, the trying to be the good person, to try just all the trying to be what everyone wants you to be. It's
it's
exhausting.
exhausting. You can't do it.
Exhausting.
Yeah. And after a while, you'll know who you can kind of make happy and who you definitely will never make happy. Because even if you get an A+, it's like, why did you not get an A++? There's the toxic people out there that are like that too. So you got to
Oh
learn
yeah.
to, after a while with experience, and you learn who are, especially as an empathic recovering codependent, that there's some people you'll never please, and there's some people that maybe you can. But the thing that's most important is that you're not looking for their acceptance. You have to come to self-love, to where you accept yourself as,
First.
yeah, as all the pluses and minuses, and get to that level of self-acceptance before you're good for anyone else, really. Because if not, then you're just operating at half power of your full capabilities as a person.
This is the key to resentment, because when you're an empath and you're always giving to everyone else and neglecting yourself, you get resentful. Oh, and resentful is a terrible thing. It for
It
the
will eat you
empath.
up.
Oh yes, that. And I mean, if you don't release it in a healthy way, you're going to have outbursts, and that's when the narcissist really has you when you're at that point. So and this is particularly so when people break up and they have children. The children take the brunt of that, unfortunately, because by the time there's a divorce or a breakup and you have children, the empath has so much resentment that they'll lash out. And it's perfect for the narcissist, because they go, see, you're the crazy one. And
That's
you
right.
play
Look,
like silly putty
everything
right
I've,
into
all
their
the smear
hands.
campaigning I've been doing to everyone. Look how that person is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually from all the crazy abuse you've been going through. And it's natural to
Yes.
react that way,
Yes.
but people that have a different spun story and narrative, they're like that. Wow, that person really is, what that person said. And that's part of the game. That's part of the manipulation. Narcissists are master manipulators. They manipulate the system, you name it, whoever they can, depending on what narrative they're going for. It's a sad deal, because that I just couldn't imagine being one needing that supply all the time and having to live in that constant state of fear-based thinking, where you're always trying to get one over on someone before they get one over on you. It's like a kill or be killed, very reptilian type of
Yes.
survival instinct way to live. And it's just like, that's not, we weren't designed. I mean, that's way back when you would think that we would be more evolved from this point, forward, that there's more healthier ways to express and do life. But than a more animalistic approach. But when you're dealing with someone with that disorder, that's what it is. It's the kill or be killed thing. And
And empaths can get drawn into that. They believe that they have to take some of those traits on just to defend themselves, to survive narcissism in any way, so they
for
do get
sure,
caught up in the getting even, and once they do allow their anger to be released, it's not healthy, because then they get kind of like a vengeance thing, or that plotting, I'm going to have the one up and all that, and it never works. It ends up really depleting you even more. The best way to deal with a narcissist, to cut off communication any way, shape, as much as you can, even if you're
That's
going through a divorce, right? Like, you would
amen.
know.
Yeah, the least communication, the better, up to level 0, because especially as an empath, like I said, they'll keep going and going. They have no, they have no qualms about just taking you down to, they have so much anger and hate and control and, within themselves, that they're projecting out onto their targets, that you don't want a part of that. And you want to control your ego, your flesh side, to where you don't get in that sandbox with them, because that is actually giving them supply. You don't know it until you know about the disorder and study it for years, like I have off and on. But that they love that. They love it because it's giving them attention. It's making them feel significant. And it's a power and control thing, especially if
Yes,
they
if
have a
the
lot of
minute they
money.
see you upset at all, they're happy. And
Yeah,
if they
that,
get a
yeah,
rise out of you, they've
yeah,
won.
yeah, because they in their mind, they're controlling you. They're significant. They're like, I can do, look what I can do. Look what I can do. It's like, yeah, but it's so
Diabolical.
dysfunctional. Yeah, and diabolical and
It's really,
just,
they do brazen, crazy things too.
oh, that's the
Really
thing. I
just,
mean,
wow.
yeah, they do such crazy stuff that people are like, no, that person that acts like that, nice person, could never do something like that. And that's part of the ruse. That's how they get away with some of these crazy things, because you know, they think no one will even think remotely that the image that I put out there into the public would even think that I would do something that way, and they'll do it. And that goes back to the lack of empathy, which is also part of their brain damage that they've endured. Um, because it's actually the anterior insula. I think we spoke about it earlier. It doesn't process the empathy region of the brain properly. There's like a dearth of gray matter there. There's not enough to, those neurons are not going off in that area at all. There's been tests done, professional tests, with sociopaths, psychopaths, and people with NPD, and that's the region of the brain where the lights do not go off. That empathic region for empathy just is, it's like hardly even there. To whereas the neurotypical person would be like, yeah, okay, you know. Uh, there was a test I was reading about too that was pretty neat. That there were, I like these studies that people do, especially on NPD, that when one person yawns, typically another person will yawn and be like, oh, you do it with people you're around, and you're like, oh, stop yawning, you're making me yawn. Try to do that with a narcissist. And one thing you'll see is that since they don't have that type of it's a crazy anomaly, but they don't yawn when average people yawn. They're just like, no
On their
yawns
own
come out of,
plane. The
yeah, because they don't
subliminal
have
part
that some
doesn't
type of,
reach them.
some
Wow.
type of connection. Even though they read people well and they manipulate people and are supreme actors, the connection is not there. That empathy connection, that type of, I guess it's probably a consciousness that we all as humans connected to, uh, is not there. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. I was just reading about that today because I like to stay up on new. I think it's fascinating. Plus, I deal with it with my situation sometimes. So
Yes. So you want to keep your mind focused on staying in that mindset,
yeah,
be
yeah.
mindful.
I always have
Yeah.
I have a firm handle on it. But we're always learning. We can always learn new things. New things happen, and like that, the yawning test. That the people with that narcissistic personality disorder were not none of them would yawn. They
That's
would just
amazing.
yeah, I
Wow.
thought it was
Hmm.
like, I was like, wow, I guess I can get that because, the lack of connection there and community, because they got to hide it. The covert's got to hide it because, if you take a tribe and there's someone that's like going and secretly hurting the members of the tribe, that person gets ousted out of the tribe. So the way the narcissist has evolved is they'll hide it. They'll put on the false persona, and that way they're accepted into the fold. And they do it every day
Yes. We talked about
since the
that.
beginning of time.
I just had seen somebody share this, that the narcissist will only choose a certain couple of people to be this way with, so they
Absolutely.
can't be found out. That's one of the covert ways that they operate, and especially in the family unit, they'll hide
Yep.
that, you know,
It's
they'll
very
and a lot of
secretive.
times they'll only do it, yeah, to you when nobody else is around, and so then when you do
Absolutely.
say something, they set you up even more to look like you're the one with the problem,
Like you're the
kind of
oddball,
thing. Like you're
and
the
you're just
oddball. Oh,
like you're the oddball. And it's like they're the one that's actually the oddball because they're doing all this passive aggressive stuff, and you're just going like, what is
mm,
wrong with you? Why do you have this thing for me? And like I said, it goes back to deep old insecurities, and they'll see something in you that they don't have, so the envy will pop up. I know it's hard for us to like process it, but this is how it works. The envy will pop up, and when that envy happens, then that disdain, and because they don't have that and you have something, maybe some personality or some way you look or something you have that they don't have, and that's where that negative aggression comes in the form of passive aggressive things like that. But
oh
yeah, that's
yeah.
it's a
I have a
monster.
friend she was just telling me the other day, she deals with a father that does this, and they
Yeah,
moved into this new place, and there's only 2 parking spaces, and he'll park almost where there's no way for her to park. So she has to go and ask the mother, "Can you please, in front of him, park a little bit more?" And then it's a big issue, and
it's a narky thing.
yeah,
Yeah, they'll play
yeah.
like little games just to get reactions because they need that supply, they need that control, and it's sadistic, it's diabolical, it's dysfunctional. But yeah, they do that all day long. They do that stuff. If you work with the boss that's a narcissist, they'll do little, hey, you have time after work to do this report or whatever. It's yeah, it's hard dealing with these people, but I think the more that we get the message out, the smaller the walls will come in for these people that have this disorder. And they'll be called out, especially if they, in the legal court system, in the family court system. I know that in England, in the UK, they have what's called coercive control, which is something that narcs continually do, like how you were saying that the person that would the narc would like put little hints and keep that person in a state of fear. That's a form of coercive control that's actually illegal in the UK. I can't wait till it's legal here, in the States, because these people will use the family court system, uh, anything that they can use to get
Parental
supply,
alienation,
parental
and
alienation
use the courts for that.
under
Yes,
another heading, because
right.
hey, this is what it is, and it's like completely not. That's not what it is, but that's the image, and it all boils down to they're so used to putting up a fake image to cover the real self that they can do it so naturally and get away with it. It's horrible. I can't wait till the courts and the world of psychology and especially the DSM starts outlining these things to um, to call this out, so we can have better lives and have better relationships, because when you can identify it and address it, then then there you go. You're onto a better, healthier way of doing life for yourself and for your kids, and family members or any who else you work with.
For the codependent, what were the first steps that you took to break the patterns? What were the things that you noticed, and then you started changing? You realized, okay, I have to stop doing that.
First,
Yeah,
first for me, it was the education, learning about how the narcissistic brain worked, how codependency worked, how my childhood worked, and putting it all together, which I wanted to plug this book again, not
perfect.
because
I would
I'm
love
selling
that.
anything, but
No, I would love
um,
it.
Ross Rosenberg talks about this. It's called the human magnet syndrome, which talks about the codependency and narcissistic relationship and how it is a literal magnet, that this that people are magnetized to each other, through these,
They're
through this.
drawn to each other from that pattern. The empath, most especially, it feels comfortable. Like
It's
you said, it feels
comfortable.
comfortable and normal from, and of course it would be from your life experience. That's makes
Yeah. What
sense
else
that.
do you know?
What
Yeah.
else do you
So
know? Right. And it's
yeah,
like I said, it's everywhere. This element is in every facet of society too, as well. So there, you leave home and you go into the world, and there's, it's in the workplace. Like I said, it's in school more than anything. As a kid, it's in school, and it's quite prevalent. So that
absolutely.
reinforces whatever beliefs you've developed from being raised that way, I
And
think.
Ross's story, Ross is a psychologist, and helps people and has his own show, and specializes in narcissistic personality disorder abuse. He was married twice to two narcissists, and then finally he figured it all out, and he's been married with his third wife for years. But he had to go through the whole metamorphosis and learning process to figure out how to make those boundaries. First of all, that, like you were asking, I mean, I had to learn how to make boundaries, and
There
I
you
ended
go.
up learning how
Boundaries.
to make those boundaries, like to where you're keeping that mindfulness and you're going, well, that doesn't feel right. But instead of going, hey, that doesn't feel right, let it roll. Go, hey, that doesn't feel right. I'm going to address this, in a good, diplomatic way, and, see if, that person has the wherewithal to work this out, and usually if someone has the maturity level and capacity, usually you can work it out to some sort of, oh, I didn't know you took it that way, or I'm so sorry. If someone's mature and can work that out. If you're dealing with a narcissist, first thing they'll do is say,
Deflect.
yeah, they'll deflect, say you're the problem, or they'll actually call you the narcissist, you know. So
Uh-huh. Yeah,
yeah, so
projection. That's where the
yeah,
projection
the
comes in.
projection's huge. So the thing that, yeah, the boundaries were the first thing that I had to do. And I had to look at myself like, who am I spending time with? What am I doing? Because there was relationships that I was actually sacrificing myself more than I should have been. So you need to readdress those type of relationships, and move on to more healthier types of relationships from there. You know, so that was what my metamorphosis and process was, learning as much as I could, then learning about me and my place in the whole thing, and that took a while, and then learning how to redirect myself to more healthier thoughts, keeping myself mindful, like, hey, whoa, what do you think? Why are you going there? This is old thinking. And you're like, catching yourself is the first thing. So when you catch yourself going into a non-positive place, then you can redirect yourself much easier. But it's the catching, and then after you catch yourself,
Mindfulness.
yeah, keeping
Being
yourself
mindful.
mindful. I'm sorry about this
Yes.
thing's driving me nuts over here.
It keeps
But
dropping. You're having to go like
yeah, it's
that.
on Velcro, so it's like this kind of makeshift little thing on my camera stand. But so yeah, keeping that mindfulness, and then keeping that keeping that. So what you're doing is you're building new neural pathways, because your brain is plastic. It's more plastic when you're younger, but it's still plastic to where you can make these new neural pathways and these new ways of thinking. And so that's what I was doing. Being mindful was I was
What you were
redesigning
saying to yourself.
myself and my thinking
Yes.
process, and that's hard. That's
Oh
not easy,
gosh.
but
Mm.
it can be done. And so what I would do with on top of that, my little trick was, um, we met through music and through family and stuff way back when. So when I would put on music, it would switch my mood, and so when I would switch my mood, then I could like kind of like process a little bit easier. And now that we have phones and 24 access to music, it was that was kind of my personal process. Everyone else's process may be different depending on what their what they like, or whatever, what gets their brain working in a different direction. But that's what worked for me, was the music, being mindful, and then starting to remap those thinking patterns to a much more healthier processing. That was
Yes,
my.
I love it. For me, it was learning to take the things that I was told, like for instance, and I'm sure you might even have been told this, you're too sensitive, or you're weird, or whatever way they could make you feel different and strange, and embrace that. Turn it into a positive. Like I had to
Totally.
incorporate the sensitivity, and like that's a gift. To be
Heck
sensitive is a
yeah.
really great thing. Change that conversation, those things you were told, embrace them, befriend them, learn to learn the advantages to having those traits. If you're sensitive, what good can come from that? Look, turn it
Right.
into a thing that's a good thing. And even your faults, that's how we learn. Nobody's perfect. It's all a process for each and every one of us. So, that's okay. And say, oh, I made a mistake. And I think you even said this before, instead of getting on that merry-go-round and beating yourself up for making a mistake, saying, well, I made a mistake. And now I know next time I'll do better. And give yourself and say, wow, I'm doing good. I'm catching myself. Even every
Right.
time you catch yourself, reinforce that, hey, I just caught myself. That's progress, instead
Big
of
time.
like you said, the getting on the merry-go-round, oh, I could do better, and what's wrong with me, and da 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 da. That's where the negative self-talk really can mess with you.
Yeah, and once again, taking fear by the reins. It's said that behind your biggest fears are your greatest successes. So don't be afraid to go out there, be yourself, be who you are, and be fearless. So that once you can get through those fears, then that whole part of you that you maybe you've been suppressed, or hey, you're too emotional, you're too feeling, which is like a total gift, because some people are just walking robots out there, that you know some of the greatest things, like your show. I mean, this is a lot of this stuff is coming from that place, and you're cultivating
Yes.
and morphing it into something that helps the whole world.
I'm not gonna
So
lie. I was nervous. I still get nervous, but I've learned, and I think the narcissist knows this, real growth happens when you take risks. When you get out of your comfort zone, um,
yeah.
and you do what you really want to do with your life. That's where the real living is. Um, but when you have this codependency thing, you just the fear really has you. But if you, I've seen it. I saw a meme that said something like, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear,"
Yeah.
and it is. So make it a journey, make it exciting. Like when you were little kids, you would go out and play. You didn't know, and you were okay with not knowing. So I think it's really important to get in touch with that child in yourself and make it more of an adventure rather than such a scary thing, you know? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that freedom and peace is big too, because you know, there's a lot of anxiety that comes with codependency. So if you can lock into that part of yourself to where you can have that freedom of expression and peace within, like that, some of the greatest, all your, the big things are all behind all of that stuff. And if you can't do it all at once, which is, do it baby steps at a time.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with, just gradually, working at it one by one.
Honoring yourself. Like my brother David, I don't know if you ever got to meet him, but for years, everybody was saying, don't do punk rock music. Oh, that's a bad scene. All the judgments and the assumptions that come with the lifestyle and everything else. Finally, before he died, this part I'm very grateful of. The last couple of years he was alive, he decided to give himself permission to do what he really wanted to do. He wanted to be a drummer and do his
Amen.
songs and punk rock music that he'd been doing under the radar for many years. And he finally went out and did it. And I'll tell you, I mean, it saves me that my brother had at least a couple of years of being his true self and honoring himself.
Yeah.
He got out, he started a band. Next thing you know, he realized he was really good at promoting and bringing bands together and starting a network in the punk rock scene. And I have to tell you, I never saw my brother so happy.
Yeah.
And it
That's
really, all he
great.
did was stopped asking
He's being
everybody's,
him, he's
yeah,
being himself, and that's what
yes.
we have to do is we have to, get those, preconceived notions that we got to be someone else, that the world especially perpetuates. Hey, you got to fit this mold. It's like, no, look at the state the world is in now. You think you want to listen to the world? It's in a shambles. So don't trust the world. Trust your heart, and
Yeah. Oh, it was
yeah,
wonderful to see him really truly get out of that fear. And a lot of people didn't want him to do it. And they meant well. They were trying to be protective, but in the
right.
end, how he was so different. He was really um excited about life and enjoying life and being himself, except he
Authentic. Yeah,
started
he's
to be
being true. You're being true to yourself.
authentic.
Yeah, you're being true to
Yes.
yourself. And yeah, I know Minnie, my old band. We did some we were on her show a few times, but
Oh,
she's a
cool.
real sweetheart. She just had a baby and she's posting her stuff. But I can imagine, with him drumming, for her it must have been just a blast. He's just a total sweet person.
Actually, she started off as a dancer, and he's the one that said, you should sing. He was very encouraging
Oh, that's
because
right.
he
Yeah,
knew what it
that's
was
right.
like to be told, no, you
Right.
can't. You're not good
Yeah.
enough, or that's not a good career, or, the things that just people tell you. He knew what that was like, and I remember talking with him about it. And so that's it. If you listen to other people, you're not being true to yourself. And then you're resentful and angry, you
Right.
know, giving your
Yep.
power away and your ability to navigate your own life from your own terms, not living the way somebody else is telling you should be living. I mean, nobody likes that. So I
Yeah.
just felt like it was a good to bring that in because it is one thing that helps me a lot. With at least my brother in the last couple of years of his life, he got to be who he really was, and he was okay with it.
Yeah.
It was a really great thing to see, I have to
That's
say.
a good, yeah. And, like with me personally, I've always straddled, you know, I've been, true to myself and then maybe not so much. And, I live I do building inspection too, which is cool. I'm grateful. But, that's a codependent thing. You do things
Yes.
that maybe are more acceptable or, and you're not 100% because I had the fear of like, well, what would happen, what if, and now at my age, I'm like, shoot, if I could go back and I would have just been
Oh, yeah.
authentic from the whole time, because instead of trying to think, oh, well, this is a security here, that's security there, it's like security comes from within. It doesn't come from the outside. And that's unfortunately what our Western culture teaches us, with materialism and everything. But nothing's guaranteed, not even tomorrow's guaranteed. So I think it's being your authentic self and being true to yourself, like what we're doing right now. We're being as true to ourselves as possible. you
Yes.
know, and it feels so natural and good. And I can't say enough about being authentic. It's the way that we should all live life. If I could do it over again, I probably would have been a lot more authentic. But
Oh,
at
ditto.
least in other things, to my music, in conjunction with my inspection career. But that's how we learn, and then we share it on to other people.
For me, I think for so long being in a codependence, you're always looking outside for that partner, for the thing that's missing. What I realized, which was huge, was
I
the
did that.
person that was missing in my life was me.
Was me,
I
the
was
person that's
missing.
always been. Yeah,
What
I
do
was did
I
the same
think?
thing. I'm like, when you
You
get that
know?
perfect partner, everything's gonna be good. It's like, no,
Yes.
until you become your perfect partner to yourself in a non-narcissistic way, in a healthy, productive way. Um, then that's when everything begins, because you got to be 100% before you can bring to another relationship. You can't be 40 or 30% and say, oh, hey, you're my 60 or 70. And I see
Oh
people do
yeah.
that all the time,
Then
and
if you're doing that, you become needy and you scare
totally
off your
needy.
partner because nobody wants that much responsibility over someone else's
For
happiness. They
Amen.
don't
You
want to,
said it
oh, don't
perfectly.
leave me, don't leave me. But really what you're doing is leaving yourself. You're not.
And you're putting all that weight on someone else's shoulders
Mhm.
instead of going in as two warriors
Yes.
and sharing the ride. You're like, okay, let me hop on your shoulders for a while. It's like, hey, you're heavy after a mile. It's like, it's just
Oh my gosh.
what can you do? But these are the things that I wish I would have known earlier in life. But at least I know now, and these things now. And life goes on, right?
Life goes
So,
on.
yeah.
Exactly. Is there anything else you want to share? I think you had said something. Was it another book or something? Or maybe,
Oh yeah. This is another thing for people that have uh, people with covert NPD or other type of maybe cluster B personality disorders, and you have children with them, and you're trying to get through it and deal with it. It's a really good book from a person named Renee Swanson. It's called Parenting with a Toxic Partner, because we all know, if we're in this predicament, that how difficult it is, especially with dealing with narcissism. It's very challenging, and this book gives you a lot of insight and details on how that works, and how to move around that, and how to not let your own boundaries get trampled over, and still come out at the end of it somewhat somewhat amicable. But it's tough for the narcissist, because they want everything, and then they want even more than that, and you're just left going, I don't have anything left to give you. But
yes.
yeah, so that's a good book. I would highly recommend it. Parenting with a Toxic Partner. It ultimately want our kids to be in a healthy environment, and unfortunately, especially when you have a codependent, narcissistic relationship, that is anything but healthy and good for the kids. So I definitely recommend this book from Renee Swanson. Here's the picture again. I don't know if we could see it, but yeah, this was available on Amazon. Also, Human Magnet Syndrome from Ross Rosenberg, also available on Amazon. So little more money for Jeff Bezos there, because we don't think he has enough.
No. That's a whole other
No, I'm not.
conversation.
Yeah, these are just things that have helped me, and I love
Yeah,
helping people.
me too.
And not saying, oh, narcissists are horrible, destroy them all. Just this is just this is how I've dealt with it, and to be aware of what you're dealing with,
This is the
and
way to get off the
understand.
toxic merry-go-round,
Yeah,
to end this way of doing things in society as a whole. It just creates misery.
It does,
really,
and you see breakup of the families. Everything is, alone, and it's just
alcohol
the
and
more,
drug addiction, sex addiction, addiction,
yeah,
um,
we've
just
got so
everything
many.
toxic.
Yeah, we got so much to deal with already that we don't need when we come home to have to deal with that stuff too, and especially in our most close relationships, with a spouse, boyfriend or girlfriend, or a parent, that has NPD or whatever. So we want to try to make these things healthier and healing people out there. So
Wonderful. I was looking at my notes to see if there's anything I left out. I think at this point we're really good. I don't know if you're going to be back. I think that's something you can think about. Of course, you're
okay,
always welcome. If more comes to you that you want to dig in and talk about maybe on a deeper level, I'm always here. Um,
absolutely.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'll tell
You
you,
are
my
welcome.
close friends are just flipped out. They're like, "What?" Or we're getting some really good reviews, and
I,
hey, that's what
I,
we're up to here.
Yeah,
It's
I
helping
love
people.
being a part of the solution, through understanding and just realizing that we're all people and we all have our own little proclivities and whatnot. That it's about understanding and just being better to each other out there. We could all use it, especially in this day and age.
Yes. I want to close the show. You said the ultimate thing for the codependent is to consider yourself first. This is my personal message, in everything, because if you're not authentic, you will be resentful. Um, and you'll be not honoring yourself. What you said about boundaries, I wanted to close the show with look into boundaries. Um, there's lots of groups on Facebook that deal with these issues. And the books that Rob suggested, look into those things. If you don't take care of yourself, no one's going to take care of you, really. I know it
Amen.
sounds cliche, but truly, truly, and you're worth it.
Yes.
You're worthy and deserving, and you're worth giving yourself what you've not received. And when you do that and you reach that place, it'll blow your mind. You'll just be like, wow, I can really do this. And you can change your own life. Really, truly, you can. So that's my last closing little bit of
Absolutely. And
encouragement.
if I may add a little
Good.
postscript there
Yes.
that, and once you learn these things, spread the word, let other people know, hey, this is,
Yes.
if you see someone
Please.
with a toxic personality, help, maybe that person, maybe not date that person or something,
Yeah.
because especially with the NPD, because they have not found a cure for that yet. So yeah, spread the word, get the word out, not in a condemnation type of way, but in a protective, loving way. And I think that's all good for humanity across the board.
Amen. I
That's
love it. Thank you again, Rob. And I hope we do it again soon. I've really enjoyed this. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you do moving forward with your own show. And
You
I'm
got
very
that.
excited
Yeah,
about
that's
that.
coming
So
up. I'm going to be working on my
yay.
channel and be doing my shows, and I would love to have you on my show as well.
Awesome. Okay, Rob, thank you so much. I think we're
Great.
going to talk soon.
Awesome. Me too.
All
Me too.
right.
All right.
Bye
Thank
now.
you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.